morning. Welcome to another fresh edition of your newspaper review segment of Inside Nigeria. My name is Winifred, your host on the program. On today's show, we are looking at what the papers have on their main cover, and that is talking about lead cover stories. We have Leadership newspaper, Nigeria's most influential newspaper, on our lineup, thoughts on our lineup for review this Thursday. Welcome once again. We head up to Leadership. Leadership's leading story says federal government donates 2 billion naira, 20 trucks of rice to Mokwa flood victims. Federal government donates 2 billion naira, 20 trucks of rice to Mokwa flood victims. And the story continues on page 9 of Leadership. Incidentally, that's the only story gracing the cover today. The paper still has a wraparound cover beneath that leading story. From there, we move to page 3 of Leadership, where we have our stand. Today's stand is on improving voter turnout in future elections. Improving voter turnout in future elections. Most Nigerians and civil society organizations heaved a sigh of relief when the House of Representatives threw out the highly contentious bill seeking to make the exercise of voting rights mandatory for the citizenry. The bill, co-sponsored by Speaker Tajuddin Abbas and Honorable Daniel Asama Agu, Labour Party Basa/Just North Federal Constituency of Plateau State, proposed to amend the Electoral Act 2022 to make voting compulsory for all eligible Nigerians with penalties including fines of 100,000 naira, 6 months imprisonment, or both. Now we move towards the conclusion of the stand. It says such legislation should make INEC truly independent of executive control, simplify voting access for all qualified Nigerians, including those on essential duty on voting days, and physically challenged persons, restore confidence in the system by ensuring that votes count and results are not altered, exercise strict oversight over INEC to ensure compliance with electoral law, and ensure that offenders are sternly punished, not rewarded, as seems to be the case now. Also, INEC must radically improve its organizational and logistical strategies to make voting as hassle-free as possible. Electoral officers, political actors, and security agents who derail the process must be held accountable. As a newspaper, we believe that Nigerians want to vote, but only in a conducive, free, fair, and credible process. Once they perceive the electoral process as transparent and trustworthy, voter turnout will dramatically improve. As from today's stand in Leadership newspaper, page 3 of the paper, improving voter turnout in future elections. From our stand, we move over to the back page of the paper where we move to the back page of the paper today where we have Thursday column with Moazu Elize. Moazu Elize is writing on France grant to CSOs, another view. France grant to CSOs, another view. In quote, it is difficult to convince any discerning Nigerian that France was merely playing the good kid on the block. Quote from today's Being Blunt with Moazu Elize. It is difficult to convince any discerning Nigerian that France was merely playing the good kid on the block. From France grant to CSOs, another view, Being Blunt with Moazu Elize, we move over to Ghana Must Go, the human part of the paper. APC celebrating defections like policy achievements coming from PDP. That is also a laughing is 41. It says APC celebrating defections like policy achievements, PDP, and of course it's the news. And Ghana Must Go asks, meaning what? Meaning what? With that, we conclude review of Leadership newspaper this Thursday. Don't forget to log into the website of Leadership for continuation of those headline stories. From Leadership, we move to the next paper we have on our lineup, still talking about Mokwa flooding, and that is Vanguard. Vanguard says Mokwa flood victims lament poor food camp conditions. Leading story on Vanguard this Thursday, June 5, 2025. Mokwa flood victims lament poor food camp conditions. And underneath that, Zenith Bank lynchings best bank in Nigeria award. ACO gets NCAA drone pilots training certificate. Oando secures $375 million facility to power upstream growth. These are the headline stories on Vanguard this Thursday. For more, don't forget to log into the website of Vanguard for continuation of those headline stories. From Vanguard, we move over to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is The Nation. The Nation says Tinubu vows to rebuild, restore flood hit Mokwa. We are still on Mokwa flood incident development. Tinubu vows to rebuild, restore flood hit Mokwa. And in the quote, he says it's tragedy shared by all. Leading story on today's Nation newspaper. We have illustration beneath that story. The action plan is that the release of 2 billion naira for rehabilitation as captured by leadership and Vanguard newspaper. Minister to station in Niger, 20 trucks of grain sent, transformers to be installed. And tragedy in figures, we have dead to 208, missing people 84, 13,354 people impacted, 186 were injured, 4,534 displaced, 265 houses damaged, 2 roads, 5 bridges damaged. These are the tragedy recorded in Mokwa incident, flood incident. And the action plan too, as listed by the president. Release of 2 billion naira for rehabilitation, minister to station in Niger, 20 trucks of grains sent, transformers to be installed. Leading story on today's The Nation newspaper. From there, we move to the stories about the masthead of the nation. Pastor Tunde Bakare says, "Why I visited President, I desire a great nation." Of course, the trendy story because this is in response to the backlash from the cleric on the presidency few weeks ago, and of course, yesterday he visited the villa to see President Bola Tinubu, and that has continued to generate controversies as after lampooning the president, he still went ahead to visit him. And in today's Nation is giving reasons for the visit. PDP, our focus is unity of members, not coalition. PDP says our focus is unity of members, not coalition. South should rally round Akpabio, says Omokri. Oando deepens upstream investment with $375 million deal. Stories today on The Nation about the masthead of the nation. South should rally around Akpabio, says Omokri. While Oando deepens upstream investment with $375 million deal. Both stories continues on page 4 of The Nation newspaper, and that concludes review of front headline stories of The Nation this Thursday. For more, log into the website of The Nation. We move ahead to the next paper we have on our lineup for this segment of newspaper review, and that is The Punch. The Punch has different story on this cover as its leading story. It says VIP's lobby presidency as federal government grants 60 private jets. VIP's lobby presidency as federal government grants 60 private jets. Customs seal of aircraft hangars at Lagos, Abuja airports over import duty default. Then just beside the masthead of The Punch, Salah, Mokwa bridge collapse fuels tomato pepper price surge. Ram prices soar 55% as inflation bites harder. Lagos Ibadan highway gridlock traps thousands. The stories continues on pages of 2, 4, and 5 of The Punch newspaper. And also that concludes the review of front headline stories on The Punch this Thursday, because there's also adverts beneath those leading stories. But for more, log into the website of The Punch. From there, we'll move to the last paper we have on our lineup this Thursday, and that is The Guardian. The Guardian is talking health. It says foreign aid withdrawal. Do not fatigue hits 331 primary health care centers. Over 400 staff puts north in dire straits. Foreign aid withdrawal. Do not fatigue hits 331 PHCs. Over 400 staff puts north in dire straits. Is a leading story on The Guardian this Thursday, and the story continues on page 6. However, the story has illustrations beneath it. Let's take them one by one. It continues with development aid reductions 2025. United States of America had $60 billion cut, 90% cut in USAID aid contracts, supporting global development and humanitarian programs. And we have the United Kingdom had 0.6 billion cut, that is billion pounds cut. Aid reduced from 0.5% to 0.3% of GNI by 2027, the lowest in 25 years, to fund defense spending. We have European Union, EU. We have 2 billion euro cut proposed. The EU plans a 2 billion euro aid cuts, that is between 2025 and 2026, shifting focus from direct support to investment and trade. We have United Nations. Nations has $5.1 billion shortfall in global health interventions due to unpaid dues from member states. 60% of UN funding for Northeast operations withdrawn. ILO asks 221 staff. WHO to share 25% salary expenditure. Illustrations beneath the leading story on The Guardian this Thursday. Foreign aid withdrawal. Donor fatigue hits 331 PHCs, over 400 staff, post North and Dire Straits. Leading story on today's The Guardian. NMDPRA awards gas trading, clearing and settlement licenses to jet markets. Wando records 220 billion naira profit in 2024. Revenue hits 4.1 trillion naira. Defection rumors swell as Adeleke Fubara meets Tinubu in Lagos. Defection rumors swell as Adeleke Fubara meets Tinubu in Lagos. Of course, we saw the trending photos yesterday when Osun State Governor, his brother, and music superstar Davido visited Tinubu. Moving ahead to the masthead, Natasha court summoned Akpabio Wambonyi for defamation. The story continues on page 5 of The Guardian. Natasha court summoned Akpabio Wambonyi for defamation. Mother son's orders arranged for allegedly assaulting vice principal in Ondo. Mother son's orders arranged for allegedly assaulting vice principal in Ondo. The news continues on page 7 of The Guardian. Lastly, on the cover of The Guardian newspaper, Gates deploys Nigeria's health budget as too poor. Gates deploys Nigeria's health budget as too poor. The story continues on page 3 of The Guardian newspaper. Of course, it's no longer news that the AU, when it was OAU, met in Abuja, which is now referred to as Abuja Declaration in 2001, to mark 15% of their budget to health. However, that is not done. Nigeria, for instance, has been budgeting at most, at best, 6% of its annual budget to health, which is which falls far short of the 15% benchmark. And Gates deploys Nigeria's health budget as too poor is a leading story on the page of The Guardian today, this Thursday. It's on that note we conclude review of front headline stories today on Leadership newspaper on the program Inside Nigeria. We don't have the second part of the program coming shortly because our guest unfortunately couldn't make it. However, tomorrow is another day and another fresh edition of the program. My name is Winifred Igwebo. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 08036886158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last